Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another live stream on Moving Home with Charlie. I'm Charlie, and this evening I've got a new guest on the channel. Katie Fox is the owner and managing director of Katie Fox Estate Agents in Poole, in Dorset. And before I bring her in to start answering your questions and to have a chat about overvaluing is the main topic of this evening, I just want to remind everybody about one of the most important messages that I try to communicate to people who need to move house. And I use the word need on purpose, right? People who need to move house. If you choose the wrong agent when you need to move house and you get let down, it can be irrecoverably bad for the next phase of your life. It can lead to losing jobs. It can lead to relationship breakdowns. It can lead to financial nightmares that were otherwise avoidable ones. And so many sellers make this mistake of thinking that all estate agents are the same. And if I can only persuade my home moving audience of one thing, it is that all estate agents are not the same. Now, I've never spoken to Katie before today. We've messaged and came into contact with each other through Best Agent, and Katie's a member of my private Best Agent WhatsApp group. And when I looked at Katie's business and her website, it very quickly became clear to me that Katie is one of the agents that I refer to as being an example of what you need to find when you need to sell your home. And that is an owner-managed independent estate agent with the owner's name above the door, which means they are putting their personal reputation as well as their professional reputation on the line with every home they list to sell on behalf of a seller. So this evening, I'm really looking for especially sellers' questions for those of you, any of you having a real difficulty selling your homes. Buyers' questions as well, who if you want to know, because one of the things that Katie said to me in our preliminary conversation earlier today is that she can't stand estate agents either because most of them are the sort of agents that give you guys the reason that you think they have such a bad reputation. And as I've said along, it is only a very small minority of agents that are really very good, and it's why it's so important that you must find them. But without further ado, because I am known to ramble on, let me welcome Katie on this evening. Katie, good evening and welcome to the channel. How are you?
Yep, all good, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, you almost wish you could hear everyone, couldn't you? Like, hi, everybody. If you can see the live chat, but everyone say hi to Katie. Yeah, welcome, Katie, says Argy Bargy. Evening all. Now, actually, what I haven't mentioned to you is the reason I asked you to come and talk on the channel this evening was because I saw your message in that WhatsApp group where you were asking other agents, what are you guys doing about overvaluing, other agents overvaluing, and bad agents overvaluing? And we'll get into that in just a minute. And that is the topic I'd like to talk about mostly this evening, so that people really understand who does it, why they do it, and how they can avoid it. But the other thing that we touched on this evening was you were explaining to me how you've had an extraordinarily high number of sellers contacting you to talk about selling their house this year. And I think you said something like 3 or 4 times as many as you'd normally expect at this time of year. Is that right?
Yes. So we have had, I think we're nearing 120 valuations since the beginning of this year, which is, I hate the word, unprecedented.
Yeah.
Usually I'd be really happy with like 25 a month. That's quite good,
Yeah.
but this is a sure sign that sellers are on the move. So for me, I'm trying to sort of fathom that out as to why we've had this influx. I think a lot of it obviously is the mortgage rates. It's a lot easier to move now because they're a bit more palatable, albeit they're never going to be back to the 1.5, 1.99%, but at least people can afford within reason to move now, whereas 6-7% was just undoable, particularly for the market level we work with. But why there's so many, I'm still trying to work that one out.
Well, regular viewers of my channel will not be surprised to hear me say that the economy is in far worse shape than headlines would have us believe. And I think a lot of sellers are beginning to suspect that might be the case, especially with that news that we're in official recession now. We have been for the last 6 months, and so I think, and I think, just again to give the viewers context, I had a quick look at your website earlier. It said you've got 94 instructions at the moment. Is that right?
Well, some of those are obviously sold, but
Okay.
yeah, we've got strong levels of instructions, which
Yeah.
you know sounds great. You've got loads to sell, but we want them sold.
Yes,
That's the
exactly.
most
And
important.
just again, so you have one office, and you have a high street branch. You have a physical
Yeah,
premises, do you?
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but we're only a small office. There's only 4 of us within the team, so it's quite a small branch. But yeah, it's quite strong levels of instructions for us. We usually sort of ride around 30 to sell,
Yeah.
but things are taking a bit longer to sell these days at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as the Rightmove monthly house price index has been showing, and just in fact, in January it jumped up to 84 days average time to find a buyer in London and 78 days outside London. So
I
it's
think we're
definitely
79, so that's riding on about where we're at. It's about
right.
79 days, which obviously a few years back it was within a week, 2 weeks, it was gone. It was guaranteed. You get it on, it would be sold within that weekend, and we'd have multiple offers. But that was a fake market, in my opinion, and we've got to stop reflecting on those prices and that market.
Yeah. And again, just for everyone's benefit, so you've been an estate agent for 25 years, is that right? But this business you've been running for 8 years, is that right?
Yeah, it's coming up for 8 years. I had a business partner 2 years ago. I bought him out, so solely on my own, it's been 2 years on the 1st of March. So a bit of a celebration, or not.
Well, I mean, I know that there are an awful lot of agents who are going to be hearing, and your average instruction value. I saw you've got a few things on at over £1 million, haven't you? 1.2, 1.3 million pounds. You starting. You got some first time buyer type properties as well. But your bread and butter seems to be around about the £500,000 mark. Is that right?
Yeah, so that's our move-in market, I would say. Definitely, that's who we attract the most is the upsizers from your sort of 2-bed house up to your 3-4 bedroom home.
Right.
And that's certainly it feels that's the most moving market. However, now the more upper end has started to move along a bit because, of course, what we were talking about with the mortgages, it's a bit more palatable now, so they can sort of afford it more so than the £5,000 a month they would have been paying on the 6-7 percenters.
We've actually got some questions coming in from people who live in Parkston.
Oh, hello.
Cool.
Hello, fellows.
I'll come to those. I'll come to those in a minute.
For those who don't know, Parkstone is just within my area of selling.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. So many first-time sellers coming to the market do the following. They pick 3 agents without anyone telling them who to pick or how to pick. They will pick 3, and because of the enormous blanket lead gen marketing that the biggest corporations do, without realizing it, 80% of those sellers will pick one of the big, in fact, sorry, will pick 3 large corporate brands and generally won't even look at independent agents. And this is borne out by the fact that these large corporations tend to actually list about 80% of all the property on the market. And the other 20% sort of gets fought over by smaller independent agents. It's a very, very unbalanced market. And so what a typical seller will do is they'll think, well, we've invited 3 round, and they'll get 3 valuations, and it will never occur to those sellers that all 3 of those agents are knowingly overvaluing that home, because they know that they're fighting against each other for the business. And so what happens is the seller will then pick one of those 3 for whatever reason, and will typically sign a long-term sole agency contract of anywhere between 3 and 6 months, and then sit there for months wondering why their property isn't selling, and thinking that they were reasonable because they went with the middle valuation. So they weren't even greedy with the high valuation, but they went with the middle one and they still got sell. Could you please share with the audience how frustrating it is from your point of view, and if you can share that example that you gave me recently about that you're up against, how frustrating it is from an agent that actually can't afford to list lots of properties that you can't sell, and you need to sell the ones that you're listing because you're paying out of your own pocket to do the marketing on each and every one of these properties. Could you just talk us through what that is like for you and how you handle it?
So for me, as a small independent agent, I guess when I hear that an agent has overvalued dramatically a property, sellers need to sell 9 times out of 10. They're there to do a job. But if they get told that their property is worth 50,000, 75, 100,000, 25,000, of course, for them, it's a no-brainer. They can see loads of money, but what they're not realising is that it's a false expectation. And then what happens is I then get them back invariably, probably 6 months, 12 months down the line. And they're in and around where I perhaps valued it. But of course, they've already been to market. So they've missed the massive opportunity of getting probably even more they could have done had they have launched at the right price in the first place. And it's so frustrating. So when I lose an instruction, our policy within the office, keep in touch. So weekly, we contact them probably more than their own agent. So we're contacting them and we're keeping up with the process and seeing how it's going. And I haven't had anyone through the door. Well, there's a reason for that, because it's too much money. I'm also seeing a lot of the agents are still pricing in 2022 peak time market values. How on earth anyone can think that their property is worth what it was in the peak of the market? It just can't be, because that was a false market that was fueled crazily on stamp duties, on a huge demand, very little supply. So that was they were never real prices. They should never have even been in the marketplace. It was our government for putting the stupid stamp duty. It was everyone bored of where they were living, wanted to get out, wanted outdoor space. It was a whole combination, but what it has done is absolutely screwed the market. But how agents still can go, oh yeah, well your neighbour got that in 2022, so yeah, we could get you that. It's just wrong. And I would rather be honest and lose the instruction and keep in touch and give them true advice throughout their process than be the one that's there and having to have these difficult conversations. Because quite frankly, this agent that's taking it on, if they're doing the job right, they're having a difficult conversation every week with their client. Why haven't you had anyone through the door? Why isn't my house selling? Reason being is because they're too much money. How can they then go, oh, sorry, I was wrong? It's very difficult to have those conversations, and I would rather me and my team take ourselves out of that and give the truth and be transparent with the market, because it's not helping anyone. No one's moving if everyone's falsely priced.
I have an old client of mine. I have an old client of mine he used to run an office of Douglas and Gordon in Pimlico in London. And he was he's still an agent now, actually. And he is one of those guys who's just as honest as the day is long and would never, ever value. And he was always up against Foxtons, who would always overvalue. But what he used to say, he had a real sort of sense of humor about him. And he used to say to them, look, if I hear you want to go with me, but you won't go with my valuation. He would refuse to take stuff on and price it too high. He said, I can't do that because I then make it look like I'm listing overpriced stock. And he would just refuse and say, I want to sell your home. And so they'd say, well, look, we'll go with other agent. He said, okay, if you go with me now, it's 1.5%. If I have to sell it after you failed to sell the other agent, it's going to be 2%. Okay.
I love the idea of that, but
he did it. No. And he said, I'm telling you that because if I have to sell it later, it's going to be more difficult, because it will be a tainted property that people have seen on the market and will be wondering why it didn't sell, wondering what's wrong with it. And that's the fastest way to kill that, that sort of buyer frenzy which you want to have on a property. But he did it with good humor. So they sort of went, sometimes, in fact, that would actually change their mind. Sometimes they go, what? You're going to... He said, yeah, because genuinely, it'll be harder to sell. It'll be harder to get the price you want. Give it to me now, it's 1.5%. If you come back to me failing after you've been with Foxtons or whoever else, it's going to be 2% because I will have to work harder and for longer. And sometimes they would obviously occasionally they go with Foxtons, then they drop the price of Foxtons and sell through them, and that would really frustrate him. But other times they'd come back to him and they go, "Yeah, you were right. It's yours. It's 2%. We'll do whatever you say now." And it must be frustrating, and you have to go through the same thing again and again, don't you? It's just time and again, and we can't ever seem to communicate to sellers that, and so many sellers think that they're the one that's not going to make that mistake. And
I think, is our average price or achieving for our sellers is, I'm not going to quote what site, but it has been for the last 6-7 years 4.4% more. So that seller could be free, but we would still get our sellers the most money in their back pocket. So they could be free and we'll still get them more money.
You got on average 4.4% more than the other agents.
Biggest
okay, that's just absolute gold dust. I wish sellers would listen to this, because the other big mistake sellers make is that they assume their property is worth the same no matter who sells it.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And as you and I both know, if you bring a property to market correctly, presented properly at the right time, at the right price, and you know how to work the offers and do the job of making sure that you discover what the market will pay for that property, then you're not underselling that property. And also, I don't think you're not making anyone overpay for it either, because when buyers are bidding against each other, that's the market doing the market's thing. Right? And you, of course, as a good agent, will never be in the position where you have to lie and pretend that there are offers that you don't have.
Oh God, that's another conversation.
Well, I mean, this is probably the biggest complaint I get from buying movers on my channel is the agent says they've got other offers. How do I know if it's telling the truth? I mean, go on, please talk about that for a minute and how much that must frustrate you.
So it's so frustrating. You need to be honest with buyers, because at the end of the day, once the sale's agreed, you've got a journey with them for 2, 3, 4 months, whatever it takes. So these sort of things will come out in the woodwork, especially where we live. It's a very small town, Paul. Everyone knows everyone. So if there is discrepancies in how we processed their offer, i.e. there wasn't any offers prior to that, the sellers will talk to another person. Oh no, we didn't have any offers. The word of mouth quite easily spread like wildfire, and then who looks bad? We do, because we've lied, pretending there's more interest than there actually is. I was always taught, if you don't know the answer, don't answer. And that goes through with estate agency. I think you need to be honest, because we're all humans. We're not just estate agents trying to rip you off and get all your money and get as much as we can, which is what I feel we're perceived as. We're actually there to do a job, and that is to make our sellers have a smooth, swift, and hopefully they eradicate the feelings they have of estate agents. That's my whole ethos, is that I want people to go on and recommend us. That I want them to know that it doesn't have to be stressful moving home. It really doesn't, and it should be a really exciting experience. But if you're then given a price that's 50,000 over, and you're sat there and you're having to clean up your house every bloody week, and it's just you've got kids, you've got dogs, you've got it's just not a pleasant experience, and it should be. That getting your house on is a really exciting time. Then the part of, this is a whole nother conversation, but then the part of obviously sale agreed to completed, again, that doesn't have to be as stressful. As long as the agent's communicating on a weekly basis, it should be a nice process. But our industry is absolutely antiquated and really needs a radical change, because we have no...
Hold my beer.
we have no regulation, no proper regulation. Yes, we're supposed to be doing this, and yes, but they don't. Agents don't.
And there's no enforcement of the existing regulations. That's the problem, isn't there?
No. And I think, as well, and we talked about it earlier, I think with the larger corporates, they're like negs are like puppets on a string. They're just being told what to do like a puppet, and they're not actually thinking of the bigger picture, which is return business as well. Your buyer is your next client. So your buyer needs to be looked after as much as your seller. That's simple as, because one day they will need to sell, whether it's in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. If you've done a good job and you've been honest with that buyer and you've built a good relationship, then they'll come back to you, surely, one would hope. Although I heard, I think it's only 40% of buyers return to their original agent, which is shocking.
Yeah,
something like that, a stat like that. And I just think that's shocking, because I'd probably say about 70% of our business is recommendation and returning clients.
Well, I know, because I've worked alongside agents for years, I know how long it takes to build a reputation to the point where 70% of your business is through recommendation. And there are new agents starting up who just dream of that day. And I always want to say to newer small agents,
it is hard work.
It's such hard work, and you've got to play the long game, because if you take the temptation of being economical with the truth and saying the old cliched lies that get you the instruction, you won't get what you've got, which is that reputation as being trusted, reliable, and people come back to you and people recommend you. You cannot buy that. You can only earn that.
Yeah.
So congratulations and kudos, because I genuinely know how difficult it is to get there. I've got clients of mine who've been agents for, some of them, one of them, in fact, 40, 50 years. And they say that even with that reputation, where they're getting so much of their business, like you said, about 2/3 of the business is from recommendation, they're finding it harder and harder and harder to compete against the relentless lead gen tech that's just hoovering up all the leads.
We've only got a small organic part, that is coming from the outside in, and this is the worrying part. But actually, I will say that that's starting to grow, because I've got my own newspaper, and we're starting to build a lot more organic. But again, going back to our actual topic, a lot of it we're losing because they're high valuations, low fees. It's the typical stupid estate agency where they're winning not off their own merit, but because they know how to win, and that is to dangle 50,000, 25,000 in front of a client. Sign them up for 16. Well, we're 12 to 16 weeks. I think you were saying 26 weeks, which I think is absolutely insane that anyone would sign a contract for that long. But sign them up with a view, I've got them now, and I'll slowly bring that price down. And that is a known tactic of estate agent, which I think is actually disgusting, if we're quite honest.
Well, it really is disgusting, because you are knowingly compromising that person's life chances of moving on. That's what I find, as you say, the word is a great word. It's a disgusting way to treat another human being.
It is. I mean,
doing it because your boss told you to isn't an excuse. Get a better boss. Go and work for someone else. Just don't do that.
And then the fees. So of course, selling this, we've got 0.5%. I mean, that's just embarrassing in our industry. That someone's making their team go out, but their team must be surely peed off, because they're not earning. The negotiators aren't earning anything. It costs me.
That's not your fee. That's not your fee, is it? That's your competitor.
But not much more, unfortunately. Right. But on average, it costs. I worked out with everything, including your right moves and everything included. It's about 1,100. It costs us to list a property. Now that's quite a lot of money, and I reckon most sellers would not even think that. They think we're selling sunset and we just earn all this money and we do little for it, but we do a lot, and that's just marketed. That's just listed. That's not the viewings, that's not the petrol, that's not the phone calls, that's not the time, it's not the sales progression, it's not any of that. That's just to list. So when someone's charging their client 2,500 to sell a home, I just can't work the maths out as to how that is actually doable, and where the incentive is for somebody to sell at that price, because there isn't.
Well, I mean, I know that to get the results you get, which is 4.4% higher than other agents, I know what's involved in doing that, which is hard work and preparation and priming buyers and that kind of stuff, which takes time and you've got to pay your staff to do it. Those low fee agents, they don't do any of that.
No.
They just
You
list.
get what you pay for, don't you? And I say this, and this sounds really cliche, but you can go to John Lewis, not Waitrose. You know you're going to get an excellent service, excellent quality, and you get your bags packed. You go to Lidl, quality is okay, but you have to pack your own bag, and that is exactly what these cheap, overvaluing estate agents are. They're a conveyor belt. They're just a Lidl. They're just chucking through instruction after instruction after instruction. Once you're on that conveyor belt, you're lost. You're gone. You're down the road.
You signed up. A lot of first-time sellers don't even realise when they sign the term. They don't read the terms of business when they sign them, and they don't even realise that they've just committed to a sole agency contract of 3 or 6 months. They don't even know that's a thing. And I know this because people tell me. I get comments from people on my channel going, "What sole agency? What does that mean?" And it's not even a mistake. They are aware they need to look out for. Now, listen, we've been chatting for nearly half an hour, and we've got lots of questions coming in. So
I can't see the questions. I don't know if you're doing that, but
I can see the questions. So here, the first question, and I've got to get to him because he put this in right at the very start. Craig Wood on YouTube asks, if a seller is willing to negotiate on price, but then just rejects your offer, what's the best way to actually get them to negotiate with the second offer and drop their asking price?
Well, I'm a strong believer in a bird in the bush is better than 2 in the hand sometimes. And if I genuinely believe like this is the best offer I think we're going to get you, and it's a really good buyer, then we'd be foolish. And we always try and recommend they work on what they're buying. Okay, so you're 5,000 short on what you would ideally want. Let's try and work with where you're buying. Let's get that back. Let's make the chain work upwards, because we see so many sales not agreed over the sake of £5,000-10,000, and then 3 months later they go, "Oh, I should have taken that. I should have taken that offer because we've just seen our dream property, or we lost out and we've just found out on land registry it went for what we could have sold and it could have all worked out." And I think, it's very easy to have a figure in your head what you want for your home, but actually it's the in the middle. So if you're looking to move from 250 and you want to buy 300, it's that 50,000. So it's just you've got to get that 50,000, not the asking price you want. So it is about negotiating, and I think sellers are still seeing the peak of the market prices, and that's the problem. And they can't get their head that Mr. and Mrs. Smith sold for X back then, and mine can't be worth less. Well, it can. It is.
Well, okay, so thank you for saying this, because they're looking at Halifax saying house prices are going up, and they're looking at the land registry saying the prices have only come down 1%. And you must be looking at those going...
So what happened, this is my analogy, so any gurus out there that know better than me, I do apologise. But we went up, we came back down, and then we've peaked a little bit. Because we came down from 2019 price, we went up from 2019, came down, and then we're peaking up back to probably where we would have been had we have not had the fake market. So if we were still 2019, I think we'd be above those prices, but not there. We'd be more like there.
You think the market has basically corrected for COVID now?
Yeah, it's correcting.
Big statement. Because what was the COVID spike? I mean, the COVID spike was big. And if you're saying that that's come off, you're reflecting what I think has happened to house prices, which is not what the house price indices are saying at all. And this brings me on.
Like I said, I'm not a guru, so please be nice to me. But that's my personal opinions. I think we would have gone up from 2019. There's no doubt we were doing well. We'd recovered well from Brexit, and we were doing all right in the industry, in my opinion. I don't know whether it was nationally, but certainly locally. And we would have gone up, but we literally shot up just because of the demand. And that was, like I said, that's just the summit was fake in my mind, and it shouldn't have been there. We should have carved the summit off, if that makes sense, and that's where we would have been.
Yeah.
And that's and then we've come down because of last year, and then we've peaked up what I'm seeing in the last month or so, which they're reporting, house prices are going up, which again is giving every buyer and seller like, maybe I'll wait, or oh God, I'm gonna, I better buy now. And it's just so confusing. It's just a strange market, and it's frustrating really watching it from the outside in when it shouldn't really be where we are.
So here's the next question. Leandra Z on YouTube says, does the seller have to accept the survey valuation price if it's lower than the agreed price with the buyer?
No. So I've just had this recently on a couple of occasions, because obviously surveyors, they have their own way of doing things as well. I hear that sometimes the big ones get told, right, make sure you down value by 10%, 5%, whatever. Again, apologies if you're in that industry and that's not the case. So I've had one, and I appeal it as an agent. I'll send over all the comparables, because if the valuers come out of area and they look, because land registry in our area is nine months behind at the moment. So what prices are they looking at? They're not looking at the current market prices. They're going back to the 2022, which isn't. So it's very hard for surveyors. And I actually, when they come and collect the keys, I'm like, oh God, how's it going? I don't envy you, because it isn't easy. But I think if you as an agent believe in the price that you have achieved, you should have comparable evidence to back that up. And I'd like to think we've got that, because we've sold X, Y, Z, and that is why we've come to that value. So I bombard them with the evidence, and actually 2 of them have come back and agreed with our price on reflection. So you don't have to accept the survey valuation price. Obviously, if it's a mortgage and they won't budge, then they either have to look for another mortgage or try and find the money from somewhere. But sellers shouldn't, unless it's really, there's this big thing on foam in the lofts, or roof issues, or if there's major things that from the blind eye a buyer can't see, then that does have to be renegotiated. But if it's just purely that they've down valued it, then that's a different story, I think.
Kylo Hawk has got a question which I think a lot of buyers will also be interested to hear the answer in. He says, offered 7% under. Seller said 5% under is max. I offered to meet in the middle at 6%. And the estate agent sounded irritated and said it wouldn't be enough. Have I done something wrong?
He just wants a deal. Basically, he wants to keep his seller happy, which is quite understandable. I think there's a lot of agents that are really hungry for the sales at the moment, but buyers are cautious. Of course they are. It's a cautious time to be buying, because no one actually has a true prediction of what is happening with this marketplace. So of course buyers are going to want to come under. It is down to us to get them up. Because that's our job. Ultimately we act for our paying client, but everything has to be done within reason. And again, this boils down to what I was saying earlier, that is where we then go, right, okay, we are X amount off. Let's not say no. Let's see if you can make this work. And I think that's the thing, not to just discount a buyer, because if you've got a good buyer, you need to be wrapping them up in cotton wool at the moment. And you need to work with them, but without, really underselling your property or making yourself not being able to achieve your dreams and goals and what your whole journey is about. But equally, you do need to try and work with the buyers. Buyers and sellers need to work together, because the sellers want this much and the buyers want to pay this much. So we need to get them in the middle. So quite rightly, 6% in the middle. I think that was a really fair offer. Probably, I don't know what sort of, it depends on values, I guess. But but yeah, I think that's a fair compromise, and that's really what should be happening now, meeting in the middle. We're back to a normal market. I don't know if you remember, before, this is a normal market. Us agents have to work bloody hard again, which isn't a bad thing.
No.
So it fathoms out the good and the bad, but we really, we do have to work together with both of them. And like I say, buyers are just as important as sellers. There's no
you can't have a sale without buyers, can you?
Exactly. There's no market without buyers. So.
Exactly right. This isn't a question, but it's an observation that Craig Wood makes. A property I like is overpriced. My dad sneakily went and viewed it for me, gave them a ridiculous offer, well under asking. That is sneaky. And they dropped the price by 10K almost immediately after his viewing. I mean, that to me sounds like, sometimes exactly. A lot of agents, they know it's overpriced and they'll use a really low offer to talk the seller down. Won't they? You've got to lower the price, Here's your question.
Oh, sorry. But to be fair, when we do viewings, we always ask what they liked about it, what they didn't like, and what they felt on price. And that's a true reflection then on the true market value. So that will be our feedback. But that's sneaky.
It's sneaky, isn't it?
That's worrying, actually.
Here's your local question.
Okay.
Rumit Somaya says, Katie, we live in Parkstone Pool. When we moved, we found the local rental market like a Dutch auction whereby the rentals are really overpriced, then reduced when not let. What do you think about that?
I'm going to be honest, I don't do lettings, so I'm probably not the best person to ask, but I would totally agree with that. I felt at one point the rental market was horrendous, because I did have rentals before I went solely on my own. Well, I didn't, but my business partner did. But I really felt for the rentals, because it was like that, and they were all outbidding each other. But then, like you said, then they then reduced the price, and you're thinking, well, someone was probably going to be paying £200-300 more a month at the higher prices. But I think the rental market, what I'm seeing, I mean, I don't follow it as strongly as I should, but I think the rental market is becoming a little bit more normalised now.
Yeah. I know markets where there really are the asking prices are coming down on rents now. In some places, not all, but in some. Lovely comment from someone on X. Duncan Cowan says, "Can't we just clone Katie and put her in every estate agent, please?"
I wish. I'm trying. My team. I'm trying.
Question from Clayton James on YouTube. He says, agents rely and use Rightmove data for listing/valuations, but Rightmove data is so out of date and not accurate to a point. It looks impressive, but this alone is keeping the asking prices up. Now, he hasn't actually asked a question there, but I was going to ask you, based on exactly what he just said, Rightmove's what they call house price index is, in fact, I don't know if you know this, Katie, it's only made up of newly listed asking prices.
Yeah. I went to some EA Masters thing and they were saying about that.
It's only newly listed asking prices. And even if they drop the price after 2 weeks, that reduction is not included in the Rightmove asking price index. And I think this is one of the things that gives sellers this wild, overly high expectation on price. Well, Rightmove says it's this, and and also Zoopla does the same. But do you ever come up against Zoopla valuations? Do they drive you crazy?
Zoopla said, and I can never say this word, but I say the algorithm of this amount, and I said, it's not a real valuation. It's not reflective on what needs doing. It's not reflective on how we work on postcodes very much in our area. So one road can be 100,000 more than the next road. So it's just not a true reflection on house prices. And I think a lot of these valuation tools are actually they're not true to. I think as agents we need to rely on what we have actually sold, our local knowledge, what other agents have sold for, because again our competition is just as important as what we're selling, and I think that's a good valuer. A good valuer is if you know your local market inside out and you know what XYZ, who got XYZ. That's where your true value will come from, not producing, that was on the market, or that the asking price was that. Well, that's not what it sold for, and that sold price may not have even come out yet. So, so I think agents are sort of stabbing in the dark as to what they think something's worth, but actually they need to really have the knowledge and know the true values, know their own local market.
Absolutely right. I've got a question from Tina Fay who says, do agents get told off by the seller when they have to reduce?
Yeah.
Overvaluing agents. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think if I was going to sign up with an agent that I suspected overvalued and they asked me to sign a contract, I'd say yes, but that contract, the condition is that you don't make me, if you make me lower my price, I'm out of the contract.
Yeah.
That's what it's also worth telling everyone what you told me earlier, Katie. So you only ask your clients for 2 weeks' notice if they want to leave. Is that right?
Yeah. At any given time.
To those of you who go, oh, there aren't any agents that don't do long-term contracts. Yes, there are, and they're always the better agents who don't have to handcuff you to their shelf for 3 or 6 months to sell your house, because they've got the confidence that you're going to be happy, even if it takes 2 or 3 months to sell. Good agents have the confidence you're not going to want to leave them, because you're going to be kept up to date, you're going to be kept communicated with and informed about what's happening. So yeah, agents, I honestly think that one of the things to think about doing, actually, Katie, is, I haven't said this publicly, we're thinking about offering a sort of default terms of business, like an alternative contract that sellers can say to an agent, where because I know what agents need and what they want and what's fair and what you've got to be protected against, and to draw up what I think is a fair contract that a seller can say to the agent, I'll instruct you, but here are my terms.
I wouldn't mind that.
So because that
way
way
I think
around,
it's fair.
Yeah.
As long as I thought it's fair and I'm not being screwed over and they're not going to give me a chance to prove and do what I need to do. Bearing in mind it does take 79 days.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks, but I'm not. I quite like when I get challenged by a seller, because actually that's quite. You've got to prove yourself, haven't you? So if a seller says, well, I need you to get me X, well, okay, I'll give it a go. This is what I'm going to do. But if not, I need you to work with me, and you need to reduce back to what I said within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
As a guide, because if you don't, then we're losing the whole. Because we everything's a strategy and it should be, but it's not with most agents. But everything should be a strategy and process, and we work very closely on the strategy, on what we do and when we do it, when we list, the set days, the best days to list, all of that, and that is all part of the process to get our sellers the best possible price the market's willing to pay, and that's my whole thing. Is I do want to do that, but not by overvaluing, because that isn't the way to do it. And I'd be absolute liar if I didn't say sometimes I get it wrong, and I might fall in love with this beautiful home, and I get carried away, and I go, I reckon I can get 15,000 more than I got. This is beautiful, and then you put it onto Rightmove or your website or the socials, and you get nothing, and you go, I've got it wrong, and you have. And that's the honest thing, is we as agents cannot accurately value everything, but what we can do is try and get it as best and close to as what it should be to get them the best price.
Now here's a good question from Ian Downing on YouTube, who says, basically he's asking, how can a first-time buyer tell that a property is overvalued? Actually, before you answer that, I'd like to also just make so Adam Nunn, who is a mortgage broker, and he's watching us on LinkedIn, says, this month has been a real eye-opener for me. I try my best to guide buyers on how to offer and what to check. But despite this, people still seem to feel like they have to offer in and around asking price, even when I can personally see it's overvalued by 5 to 10%. So for a first-time buyer who doesn't know how to tell the difference, have you got any tips for them to how to spot an overvalued property?
I think probably the length of time it's been on the market is probably quite a good indicator. I think you can see if it's been reduced. So if it's been reduced and then it's been on for a long time, that can indicate that there's something either not right with the property, which invariably it isn't that. Everything sells at a price, quite frankly.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, if something's been on length of time it's been on the market is probably the biggest indicator as to why a property isn't selling, is to do with price.
Yeah, I agree. And also, as you and I were discussing earlier today, there are some sellers who just aren't serious.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They've actually got no intention of selling. There's some weird reason they want their house on the market.
Why
They're never going to sell it.
We've got a certain seller. I'm sure if any agents I know are watching this, they'll know exactly who I mean, that I just won't even return the call to, because I'm actually, nearly said but yeah, you've got people that will just waste your time, and you'll find them a fantastic buyer, and you know that they're probably not going to sell. And actually, you have to almost pre-warn your buyers as well and say, look, she's notoriously been difficult to find a property for, so perhaps keep looking. And it got to the point where I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm wasting so many people's money on surveys and solicitors, and it's not just me, all the other agents have experienced the same person. And it's, there are a lot of weird sellers that just like to meet people. I don't know the reason behind it, but
and actually you were also saying to me that there are some sellers who you will turn away, right? So you actually charge your sellers an upfront marketing cost, and you said the serious sellers have no problem with that, and the ones that cough and sputter and go, not sure.
Why would I pay you? So a lot of I think we're probably one of few agents that do charge an upfront fee locally. The reason I do this is I am extremely passionate about what we do with our marketing. It's not, no agent is the same. I get really annoyed because actually we have one of the best photographers. A lot of agents say they have a professional photographer, might not be as good. We use all the tools on Facebook, on Instagram, the business tools. Everything we do is it like I said, a process and a plan, and we do invest a lot of money in that. And I don't charge a huge upfront fee; it's nominal, but it helps towards my 1,100 that I am paying out of my pocket to list their property. But equally, it's a contract between myself, an early contract. It's almost like a deposit between myself and my new seller, and they're investing in me and believing in me, and I'm going to deliver. That's the idea behind it.
So, Nick B says, I see houses on the market with inflated asking prices. They come off many months later, presumably due to no interest. Is overvaluing slowing down the housing market and reducing transaction numbers?
Yes. Yeah, it's stopping everyone moving. Like I said, it's giving false expectation to sellers. They're then stuck. Buyers have no idea what's I feel quite sorry for buyers, because it is confusing. Going back to the previous comment, it's really confusing, because some houses are on for way more than others, and then you think, well, why is that? What's wrong with the one that's on for lower? Well, actually nothing. It's on for the right price. It's the other way around. And I think it's definitely slowing the market, and it's making buyers cautious, which again is slowing the market down. If everybody could just be honest and value correctly, then we would have a free flowing market for all, and that is the ultimate goal. Everyone's here to sell. Our sellers are paying clients properties, not to have them sat looking pretty on the shelf and just on the market.
Which is exactly why I'm putting together the exchange price index. So I'm putting together a national public home price index of exchanges reported by buyers or sellers or agents or conveyancers, because it's going to be as accurate as land registry data, but 3 to 6 months sooner, so people will know what's actually happening. Now, Barry Crump asks, when selling a property as being vacant and no chain, because you've gone into rented, would it be best to show the house empty, or should it be dressed?
Oh, interesting question. Depends what your taste in furniture is like. address.
That's an answer you don't get to give to individual sellers, is it? You have to. That's the answer you want to give. Say not with that furniture.
But I think, I mean, for us, obviously, it's great if it looks like a show home. But I think a lot of people can't see past. So whilst I can see a double bed can fit in a room quite easily, there's been numerous times I've had to lie down and prove to people that you can have a double bed in a room. And trust me, that's a true story, many a time. But I think, I always think it feels a little bit more homely if you have got furniture in there. But like I say, if it's not doing the house justice, then probably get empty, if that helps. Without upsetting any of my existing sellers.
Sorry?
Without upsetting any of my existing sellers.
Yeah. Mad Mountain Man says, finally, an agent stating that estate agents are still listing new to market properties at 2022 prices. Would you please ring my local ones and inform them of their idiocy?
With pleasure.
AW07 asks, do some houses not even get advertised because you know a buyer straight away?
Okay, so I'm not a great fan of this off-market selling. A lot of agents do it. They'll value a property and they get someone around and they get an offer. But I'm acting for the seller, who's my paying client, and I feel that every property needs to go to open market personally, because that's when you're going to get your best price. And if you don't, how are you going to know whether you got your best price? So, but unfortunately, yes, there are a lot of properties that are sold off market before they go live to websites, Rightmoves. We do a sneak peek, so we'll give our registered sellers a chance and buyers to see our properties. So we do it on our social medias, as well as our website, our database. So we'll do that, and then we go live later on, like 3 or 4 days in the process, onto your Rightmoves and your Zooplas. So it gives the heads up. It also gives everyone who's perhaps from out of town, like London, out of the area, a chance to make plans to get down for when we're planning to start our launch, as it were. So, but yeah, I'm personally, I'm not a great fan of that. And I think it puts unnecessary pressure on the buyer as well, because they're like, oh God, it's going to go to market. Oh, let's just offer asking, or let's just do, and then they can easily change their mind, which again is not a great process for our seller. And it can put us on a back foot with starting a bad relationship with our seller, because we've got someone in, we've encouraged them not to go onto market, we've got this, and then they've turned out to be a waft and not gone ahead. I won't explain what that means.
Katie, believe it or not, we're approaching an hour.
Wow.
I know, it flies, doesn't it? And what I'm really keen to ask you, there are more questions, and I'm really sorry, guys, we're not going to get to everybody's questions. I wish we could, but we're just going to run out of time. I would love to ask you, and I'm sorry, I should have given you advance notice of this question and putting you on the spot here. And if you're not ready and you'll come back to it, that's cool. We'll take a couple more questions. But if you could say one thing to the moving public about estate agents that they don't get, that drives you mad, if you had the chance to say, right, everyone listen to me, this is what you need to know about estate agents if you're moving house, people up and down the country. As an estate agent of 25 years, who has said that you basically operate on a basis of honesty being the best policy, which has paid off for you now that you get 70% of your business from referral, what would you say to people who struggle to find good agents? Because I've had sellers saying, I cannot find a good agent. What do you want to say to people? Anything you want.
So, like we have to research on your properties, you need to research us. And by saying that, don't just go onto our website, look at our social media, look what we do, look how we present, look at our property presentation, Google reviews. Oh my goodness, Google reviews, they tell everything you want to know. So when that agent stood in front of you and they're telling you they do X, Y, Z, look at their Google reviews, see if that's backed up. Results, see what they're selling. Are they selling properties in your local area? Comparables, what comparables have they brought to back up this valuation? What are you getting for your 0.5% that they've ridiculously, quoted you? Not a lot. No. if you compare to the agents that do charge. I mean, I'm not extortionate what I charge by any means. I probably should charge more, but I don't. I'm fair, reasonable, and I give them options. Actually, there's 3 options of what you want to choose, 3 different packages you get from me. So you get to choose if you want a cheaper option, you want to be like a basic agent, what they all do, plus a little bit more, or if you want to go up the scale. So I work quite differently in that sense, but I do believe you get what you pay for, but do your research yourself, see what you think and who you feel would work, you're going to be working with the best, because trust me, you're working with this agent for the best part of 4-6 months. So if you don't like them or get a feeling or go in their office, again, massive thing, go in and register, see how you're responded to, see, you know, what they're doing, what their service is about, or booking a viewing, see how their viewing assistants, their sales negs are doing, because all those things are really important to how you're going to end up with a good price for your home, a smooth. Well, it's not always about how much, it's about getting the price you want as well as a good service. And I think service is massive, communication is everything. So I would just really research every single aspect and look as if you were a buyer as well. That's quite important.
Well, thank you. No, that's brilliant answer. Thank you. And I love springing questions that you don't know I'm going to spring on you, because it just means we get a straight, honest answer, and it's always really good to get that. There's been a lot of discussion on my channel recently about corporate agents pressuring people to use in-house mortgage services. Now, I'm assuming that as a small independent agent, you don't have in-house mortgage services, do you?
No.
So you can answer this question impartially. What's your advice to buyers who feel pressured to use in-house mortgage broking services? Because some corporate agents say, our seller has asked us to keep it all in-house.
It's a load of bull. It honestly is. It's just, again, the saddest, and what I heard, and I've never worked for a corporate, but what I've heard is they get targeted more for mortgage leads than they do to sell houses. Now, for me, that is, so you're going with the mortgage broker in the knowledge that they're going to get a massive chunk of that mortgage lead, and that's why they want you to go with their mortgage broker. 9 times out of 10, they're absolutely CRAP as well. And again, with their conveyances, they're absolutely rubbish, these conveyances that they pass over and you have to use if you want this transaction. It's not doing the seller the justice that we should be given a good service as agents, not dipping into other pockets which we're not knowledgeable of.
So in a nutshell, you're saying don't use the agent's in-house referred conveyancer or mortgage broker?
No.
And you can say that with total impartiality, right? Because this is just your general advice.
We recommend solicitors. We do, because they're good solicitors. We recommend good brokers because they're good brokers, but not because they're in-house and we're going to get a huge amount of chunks of money off of them. And you know, I get approached by these online solicitors. Oh, we'll give you £100 or £300. We'll do this. I'm just not interested. I want a small local solicitor that I can work with and we've got a relationship with. I don't want team 1, team 2, team 5, whatever it is. No one knows what they're doing. So for me, it's all about keeping it local in that sense. And I think the buyers are being conned in that. I shouldn't say that. I'll probably get sued now, but I think that there's a certain you don't need to.
Well, Katie, it's been an absolute delight having you on the channel. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for braving my audience. But as you can see, my audience is a pretty decent bunch.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And thank you for helping me communicate the message that not all agents are the same.
Yeah.
And that when you're going to move house, you need to move house. Your choice of agent is critical.
Yeah.
Now, on that note, I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. Thank you all very, very much for watching yet again. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your time. And I'll see you on the next video. Have a great evening, everyone. And Katie, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Have a nice evening. Bye.